Next Monday on an all-new Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
It's good to meet you.
Buffy's first boyfriend appears from the past.
My gut tells me this is a wrong guy.
Cold hands.
You know, it's getting really crowded in here tonight.
But his desires have an evil twist.
I'm offering you a trade. You make me a vampire, and I'll give you the Slayer.
I love it.
An all-new Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Next Monday.
Buffy the Vampire Slayer Season 2 Episode 7 Lie to Me, written and directed by Joss Whedon, is a defining episode in the show and the Whedonverse altogether, with a rejection of the black and white morality that previously defined the show, and a firm assertion of gray morality. It prods at the ideas that good guys have to be perfectly saintly, with a look into Angel's evil vampire backstory, and that bad guys have to be totally repugnant, with a sympathetic villain, while criticizing the idea of sympathizing with purely bad guys. Unfortunately, it also makes fun of vampire cosplayers, and possibly Anne Rice fans with it, giving the episode a mean-spirited undertone that doesn't hold up well. The episode starts with Drusilla stalking a young boy. It's a nice hint of the Drusilla big bad that we never actually got. Instead of Buffy showing up to save the day, Angel shows up. It's clear from their interaction that they have a history, perhaps of a gothic romance nature, akin to his relationship with Darla. He warns her to leave or else. She almost kisses him and promises that she's just getting started, before dramatically leaving. Buffy arrives to witness the end, doesn't realize that Drusilla is a vampire, and assumes that Angel is having an affair. Like in Season 2 Episode 6 Halloween, Buffy doesn't communicate her insecurities with her partner, and instead lets it fester. The next day, there's a joke about Cordelia thinking that Marie Antoinette wasn't such a bad person, minimizing her presumed oppressive actions, because Cordelia identifies with her as an upper-class popular girl. It's a joke about Cordelia both being stupid and a bully, similar to her unconventional take on Sherlock in Season 1 Episode 11 Out of Mind, Out of Sight. It's the first sign of her characterization as having fascist ideas, which is made explicit in Season 2 Episode 11 Ted. It establishes a theme of the importance of not downplaying the crimes of evil people. Ironically, Marie Antoinette wasn't actually that bad for her day compared to her contemporaries, and her characterization of an evil tyrant is the result of defaming propaganda, similar to the demonization of Elizabeth Bathory and Jafar ibn Yahya, the man that Disney's Jafar is very loosely based on. Given that Marie Antoinette is not the focus of the episode, it's not as big a flub as, say, not realizing that hyenas are matriarchal, so I'll give Joss a pass on this one. Ford, Buffy's old friend from Henry High, shows up and says that he's transferred to Sunnydale High. Some fans speculate that he was originally going to be Pike, Buffy's boyfriend in the movie, and was rewritten as a new character when they couldn't get Luke Perry. However, Buffy herself was recast, as was Merrick, so unless someone specifically held the rights to Pike, and not the rest of the movie, we can presume that Ford was always an original character. That said, it would probably make for a better plot if Ford were Pike instead. Ford is a guy who Buffy used to have a crush on. He rejected her, but still wanted to be friends, and Buffy spent months moping in her room while listening to the Divinals. It's an interesting parallel to Xander and his rejection, moping in his room while listening to Patsy Cline in Season 1 Episode 12 Prophecy Girl. It honestly makes me feel better about Xander, with Buffy doing the same sort of thing. Yeah, Xander was a bit of a jerk about it, but we can imagine Buffy was too. She was catty then. The specific song that Buffy listened to was I Touch Myself, and she quickly denies knowing what it meant, and it takes Willow a while to figure out what it means. While it makes sense contextually that Buffy would not want Ford to think that she masturbated while thinking of him, it illustrates the stigmatization of female sexuality and masturbation. This is a product of a specific conservatism of early Buffy that we'll see mostly done away with by Season 4. With Angel apparently having an affair, talk to him, Buffy. Buffy resumes her attraction to Ford. Xander then redirects his envy in Ford's direction.
Jeez, doesn't she know any fat guys?
Oh yeah, nice fat hate Xander. Ford hangs out with him at the Bronze. Angel shows up, but Buffy gives him the cold shoulder, and Angel rightly gets jealous. On the way out, Buffy notices a vampire. She sends Ford away, but he returns just in time to see her slay. She makes up an excuse, but he reveals that he knows that she's the Slayer, that he found out before she left Hemry High. It's never explained where he heard the word Slayer. It makes zero sense unless he talked to her, Merrick, or a vampire. It's suggested that he has done some research into the occult, but I wish it were made explicit. Buffy herself should be asking this question. If he didn't hear about it from her people, that could imply a potentially dangerous third party. Even if she's too love-struck to worry about Ford, Giles should be asking about this. It would all just flow better if he were Pike and knows she's the Slayer from the adventures of the movie. He could help Buffy slay the vampire, it would feel like old times, and he would seem like a good substitute for Angel. Instead, he seems like a good substitute for Angel because he's a down-to-earth human student who randomly knows about vampires and slayers. Ford, however, has a dark secret. He's friends with Anne Rice cosplayers. I mean, they don't say Anne Rice, but basically...
I fought more than a couple pimply, overweight vamps that call themselves Lestat.
Anne Rice's Vampire Chronicles popularized the conception of vampires having a secret society with attractive gothic romanticism. Her vampires embodied the spirit of the lonely bookworm, mingled with the allure of sexual dominance and the excitement of a power fantasy. Starting in 1989, Anne Rice's Vampire Lestat fan club has hosted an annual vampire ball, a party where everyone dresses in their finest dark gothic formal wear and pretends to be members of a secret vampire society while geeking out about their favorite book series. Anne Rice cosplayers influenced the vampire lifestylers and set a standard for modern Byronic vampires. Every fandom has its big controversial debates over which elements are preferable. The comics fandom has DC vs. Marvel, Star Trek has Kirk vs. Picard, and the vampire fandom has Byronic vampires versus inhuman monster vampires. That is to say, should vampires look like Lord Byron, the bad boy of the Regency era, or should they look like Count Orlok from Nosferatu? Twilight or 30 Days of Night? Angel or the Master?
Vampires don't cry? It's almost as bad as that sparkly twerp.
During the production of Buffy, Joss seems to have been a Dracula and Nosferatu fan who didn't like Anne Rice vampires as much. His vision of Buffy vampires was of animalistic minions led by Dracula and Orlok.
I was imperiling the theme of Buffy, which is that Buffy is actually the same theme as Hamlet, which is how do you get through adolescence? How do you see the world is screwed up and not give up? How do you take arms against the sea of troubles? How do you make a positive difference in the world? And vampires in Buffy are just metaphors for all of the challenges that you face in that period. And so Joss felt that vampires should be ugly. They should be very quickly overcome, and they were not supposed to be sexy. He said, I don't like that Anne Rice crap.
David Greenwald, however, seems to have been more of an Anne Rice fan and persuaded Joss to insert the Lestat-esque Angel into the story and make the Order of Aurelius more Byronic than animalistic. Joss accepted this, and we started to see a shift in Season 1, Episode 7 Angel, but Lie to Me then shows up to assert that Dracula is cool, and vampire cosplayers are a bunch of dorks.
My God, could you have a dorkier outfit?
You gotta back her up, D. You look like a big ninny.
The main cosplayer is Diego. Wearing a cheesy vampire costume, he's coded as a geeky loser. He is influential in this cosplayer community, hosted in a private club called the Sunset Room, which looks suspiciously like the Republic in New Orleans, the venue that hosts the Vampire Club. And he expects something from Ford. Ford promises Diego the chance to die young and stay pretty. We can infer that it means to become a vampire. Ford fancies himself a supervillain, and he recites a boast along with Count Dracula on television.
You play your wits against mine. Me who commanded armies hundreds of years before you were born.
This is a specific version of Dracula, the BBC production of Bram Stoker's Dracula from 1973, starring Jack Palance and directed by Dan Curtis, the creator of Dark Shadows. Joss was really specific on this point. explicitly referencing it in the script. This says to me that it's not just that Joss wanted to reference Dracula, because it's thematic to put an iconic vampire film in a vampire TV show. If that were the case, it would just be the Bela Lugosi version, like a bit of dialogue in Coyote Moon, or one of the Christopher Lee versions. They're the iconic Draculas. The fact that Joss wanted a specific scene in a relatively obscure Dracula film says to me that Joss is a Dracula fan and wanted to pay homage to a Dracula movie that he personally likes, which gives context to his mockery of cosplayers associated with Anne Rice fans. It's pretentious snark, analogous to Supernatural mocking Twilight fans in Season 6, Episode 5, Live Free or Twi Hard. Angel shows up at Willow's window. She invites him in. I'm sure this will in no way come back to haunt her. He asks her to use her internet skills to find out information on Ford. She thinks that he's just jealous, but humors him and finds that Ford hasn't really transferred to Sunnydale High. It looks fishy, so she agrees to help him investigate and to keep it secret from Buffy. She finds an address to the Sunset Room. The next night, Angel, Willow, and Xander check it out. There they meet Chanterelle. She will be a recurring minor character on the order of Jonathan. She shows up again in Season 3, Episode 1, Anne, and then migrates to Angel, even making an appearance in the Angel series finale as a symbol of the common man working for a better future. In Lie to Me, she's a dorky cosplayer who thinks vampires are neato. Angel goes on a rant about how the cosplayers are foolish children pretending the monster is gentle in order to feel safer. This is thematic of Ford's attraction to the figure of Dracula and Buffy vs. Vampires. Remember that Dracula isn't a Buffyverse character yet, but is also foreshadowing to the reveal of Angel's backstory. It's also pretty rude of him/Joss for hating on what amounts to Anne Rice cosplayers.
These people don't know anything about vampires. What they are, how they live, how they dress.
So, that is an effective joke in the most straightforward reading, that the cosplayers know how at least one vampire dresses. But there is another reading that works alongside it. Anne Rice fans don't know anything about what vampires are because they believe in Byronic vampires, not animalistic vampires. And they think vampires dress like Angel because David Greenwalt is an Anne Rice fan and designed Angel as a Byronic vampire and not a real vampire. Joss Whedon would do a similar double joke in Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog, where the line, "Who's gay?" is immediately followed by a shot of Neil Patrick Harris, who is gay, and then followed by a cut to a character with a stereotypical gay lisp. They say he saved her life. Those in the know will laugh at the in-joke, and the rest won't feel left out because there's a second joke that they'll see as the only joke. I can't prove this is an in-joke, not being in the in-group, but
I've got a theory.
Meanwhile, Buffy and Ford run into a couple of vampires and split up to fight them individually. Except, instead of actually killing the vampire, Ford makes a deal with her to give him information in exchange for him sparing her. When Buffy catches up with him, he lies and says that he killed the vampire. Amazing! Or less so if it were Pike who helped Buffy kill vampires in the Henry Gym. Buffy builds him up to Giles, when who should barge in to steal a book but the vampire that Ford supposedly killed? The book theft will be followed up on in Season 2, Episode 9, What's My Line Part 1. But we focus on Ford's betrayal for now. He shows up at Spike's place to pretend to be a badass supervillain, annoying Spike and cajoling him into honoring villain cliches. Spike wants to just kill him, but Drusilla holds him back, knowing Ford could be useful, which shows Drusilla's power in the relationship, at least as initially conceived. The second half of the season downplays that.
Sure, he's got a certain oenosity, but...
Lie to Me is sort of a Season 2 counterpart to Season 1, Episode 5, Never Kill a Boy on the First Date. The episode that saw Buffy wanting a normal date with a human boy named Owen, who seemed nice, but turned out to be a jerk who got a little too into fighting a vampire. Buffy had to let him go because he didn't respect the seriousness of violence and just saw it as a game. Fans sometimes call this his Owenosity, and Ford demonstrates the villain side of it. He thinks that being a villain is a game and causes harm, while actual hardcore villains don't accept him. A theme that comes up a lot in Season 6 with the trio. His oenosity leads him to offer the chance to kill Buffy in exchange for becoming a vampire. Despite not liking him, Spike takes him up on it. Angel tries to confront Buffy about Ford, but she confronts Angel about Drusilla. Having seen an image of her in the Watcher Diaries, Buffy knows that she's a vampire often romantically involved with Spike. In contrast to Angel's dismissal of the cosplayers, he insists that Buffy needs to believe the comfortable lie because the truth of Angel's backstory is so much worse. She badgers him, and he relents. When he was a soulless vampire, he selected Drusilla to be his prey, a girl of purity whose society did not understand her psychic abilities, and tormented her with the thought of being a witch. Angel stalked her, psychologically tortured her by killing everyone she cared about, and drove her to seek salvation by becoming a nun, only to then turn her into a demonic vampire. It's a Christian villainous act about corrupting purity, and it honestly doesn't mean much to me because I'm not a Christian. I imagine the blasphemous act was deeply impactful to most WB audiences of 1997, but it's not any more meaningful to me than any other acts of torture and murder in the series. It really bothers Buffy, though, destroying her illusions that Angel is perfectly good. What isn't addressed in the episode is that Angel with a soul and Angel without a soul can be considered, more or less, two different entities. Angel's good qualities are all present in his soul. Without a soul, he has psychopathic apathy, plus vampire instincts, compelling predatory actions. With a soul, he cares, and can suppress his vampire instincts and other bad traits. His psychology changed so abruptly and significantly that the state before ensouling and the state after ensouling can be considered two entirely different people. The show ultimately comes to accept this idea and assigns them two different names. Angel with a soul is called Angel, the name he assumed in the New World. Angel without a soul is called Angelus, the name he assumed in the Old World. But Lie to Me does not use the two names, and problematically, it conflates both of them as Angel, the vampire with a soul who once tortured Drusilla.
You die, and a demon sets up shop in your old house, and it walks, and it talks, and it remembers your life, but it's not you.
Now, soulless vampire psychologies are built from their original ensouled human personalities, so Lie to Me hints at what will be made explicit in Season 3, Episode 16, Doppelgangland.
Well, just remember, a vampire's personality has nothing to do with the person it was.
Well, actually, it's a good point.
Angel Season 4, Episode 15, Orpheus, will have Angelus emphasize that he is always inside Angel, and exert some influence on him, so anytime Angel behaves maliciously, that is Angelus acting out through him. Angel can never truly escape Angelus, but there's still a giant difference between Angel having a bad side and Angel being nothing but the bad side. With the perception of Angel as the same guy who tortured Drusilla, Angel assumes an ethical burden that I don't think he deserves. Similar to Xander being conflated with his hyena possession in Season 1, Episode 6, The Pack. As the shows progress, Angel, Buffy, and Xander will all do reprehensible things of their own free will, and they hypocritically won't be condemned in the same way that Angel and Xander are for actions they can't control. Angel tells Buffy about the Sunset Club and tells her not to trust Ford. She takes this under advisement. When Ford asks her to come to the Sunset Club at night, she shows up several hours early and witnesses him being sketchy. He's one step ahead of her and locks them all inside with a reinforced door that can only be opened from the outside. And he invited Spike and Drusilla to party. Buffy demands an explanation, and Ford delivers a sympathetic villain speech. He has an incurable disease that will make life hell for him and ruin his looks before he dies. This is the real meaning of his desire to die young and stay pretty. He can't have a normal human's life, and he's so scared of his fate that he's willing to become a vampire to escape it. To not feel conflicted, he throws himself into the role of a villain. He admires Dracula, wants to be Dracula, and gets a thrill from exploiting ignorant cosplayers and outsmarting the Slayer. It lets him feel powerful when he's terrified. He is a reprehensible person, but he's ultimately sympathetic. He shares his sad story as a power play to get Buffy to feel sorry for him, and she admits that he's pitiable but ultimately reprehensible. In recent years, there's been a push to make villains simplistically unsympathetic. Some feminists involved in Antifa activism are increasingly concerned that feeling sorry for villains will make people think that they're not really villains, and thereby allow malicious sentiments to take root, as with the backlash to Kylo Ren of the Star Wars series.
Hate leads to the dark side.
This insistence on black and white portrayals is relatively recent. Many attribute it to the post-9/11 Bush era's cultural desire for simplistic American versus anti-American conflicts, as embodied the American spirit that was cultivated by warmongering Republicans.
Either you are with us, or you are with the terrorists.
This is the 90s, the 1990s in point of fact.
In the 90s, villain storytelling was a bit more nuanced. There was a bit more of a cultural emphasis on empathy, so it was more acceptable to examine how villains could be sympathetic, or might even have valid sides of the story. Today, Ford being sympathetic might have people speculating that Joss Whedon has fascist sympathies, but Lie to Me was uncontroversial when it aired, because people could understand, there but for the grace of God go I. People can be sympathetic and still make bad choices. That's just an accurate depiction of humanity.
Well, I do feel sorry for you, and if those vampires come in here and start feeding, I'll kill you myself!
The vampires come in, Ford attacks Buffy, and she knocks him out. The cosplayers realize that whiny Louie isn't a real vampire, and that they're facing real Dracula-esque vampires. So they're in danger, and Buffy fights to save them. She realizes what Spike really cares about is Drusilla, and threatens her to get Spike to let everyone go. Everyone except Ford, whom she locks inside with the vampires. This illustrates moral complexity. Angel is a good guy who was once bad. Ford is a bad guy with sympathetic motives. Spike is a bad guy who generally cares about his evil lover. And Buffy is a good guy who doesn't rescue Ford, the sympathetic human, and allows him to be eaten because he chose his side. Similar to her being too late to rescue the zookeeper from being eaten by hyenas in the pack. It's a little ambiguous how much Buffy intends the outcome, but dialogue implies that she deliberately writes him off as vampire chow. This will not be the last time she surrenders a bad human to the appetites of vicious monsters either. Spike keeps his side of the deal and sires Ford, but you can tell from the look he gives him that it isn't a very pleasant experience. He dies young and stays pretty, and Buffy mourns him, and then slays the resulting vampire. It's possible Spike got revenge through her. I mean, he didn't take Ford's body with him to keep him safe from the Slayer, just let him be buried and slain. Buffy muses on the complex nature of morality. She'd prefer a simple world of black and white morality, but she now realizes that it was all a lie. Giles says that it's a natural part of growing up to realize that, so it's a sign of Buffy's increasing maturity. Buffy as a teenager is still coming to terms with all of the responsibilities of adulthood, and she recoils at the horrific nature of complex morality and begs Giles to lie to her once more.
Lie to me.
As a father figure, he tells her a beautiful lie, that morality is a simple black and white paradigm. But Buffy knows the truth and has to call him out as a
liar.
Her final line is delivered very impactfully, after the show technically ends and the credits begin. With Joss's credit visible, it feels like his calling card of moral complexity. Generally speaking, he is a great storyteller, and I always feel that this is him making a statement about his way of doing things to challenge black and white storytelling. Black and white morality is an easy way to view the world, but it is ultimately a lie, and growing up means recognizing the world in all of its messiness. For example, Joss Whedon, anyone? I think it's reasonable to say that he is a huge jackass who let fan adoration go to his head and has a lot of unexamined internalized misogyny that comes out more often than it should. I also think that he legitimately believes the bits of feminist philosophy that he's referenced and that he cares about feminist storytelling. It would be very easy to say either, no, he's a really great feminist and Kai Cole is a liar, or he never believed a single thing he ever said about feminism, and it was all a trick to infiltrate women's spaces. But really, he's a flawed human being who is both a great feminist storyteller and a misogynistic jerkface. Recognizing that complexity is a part of growing up. As for the rest of Lie to Me, it has its moments, but is unfortunately hampered by clunky storytelling, and Joss's petty vendetta against Anne Rice fans. The big point about black and white storytelling works fine with Ford, but is pretty weak with Angel because of the confusion about Angel's responsibility for actions committed in the Soul Estate, as in Jealous. The vampire cosplayers are thematically appropriate to Ford's admiration of Dracula, representing a good guy manifestation of the vampire fandom, but their usage just feels insulting. Vampire fans are going to make up a significant percentage of the Buffy the Vampire Slayer audience, and they're going to see themselves in the vampire fans on screen. So it's uncomfortable when Buffy, Xander, and Angel mock and denigrate these characters. It's really a misuse of the depiction of fandom. Finally, I think the episode would be stronger with Buffy reflecting on her own moral complexity and leaving Ford to be eaten. Angel Season 2, Episode 10, Reunion, uses Angel pulling that same move as the start of his downward spiral in the season arc. It'd be nice to have it make the same impact on Buffy. Still, the episode ends on a strong note that signals the end of comfortable childhood lies and the beginning of an unsettling moral complexity. That the show is committed to this concept is made clear when the next episode challenges one of the foundational moral premises of the show and questions if Giles is truly good. Be seeing you.
Liar, 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 liar.
Please like, share, subscribe, and consider donating to my Patreon. Pledges of $2 or more will earn you an explicit thank you at the end of each video. Thank you.